Hello. One thing that I did not anticipate is that now the computer is giving me instructions for PowerPoint in Dutch, but we'll find our way through it. Challenges. All right. Most of you know me. I'm Jeff Hardy. We're going to talk about compliance for websites. And I want to start, first of all, who's done a compliant website, either financial or healthcare or similar? Who's done one of those? Good. Means I'm the expert. It's always a good position to be in. Do you see a need for it? Anyone?
No.
No? No what? Yeah. There's a couple of reasons. I think that before we talk about doing compliant websites, let's talk about why we're interested. Why Power, DNN, and Manage.com. Why we're interested in compliant websites. It's the same reason why you should be interested in compliant websites. The first is that the people who require compliant websites have a certain characteristic that you automatically know about them in advance. What you know about them is that if compliance matters to them, they're a real business. Small, micro businesses, bake shops, things like that do not require compliance. Larger websites do. Larger customers do. Compliance is an issue. There we go. So here's the agenda for today. We're going to talk about why it's important. We're going to talk about, we're going to kind of sort through the maze of icons and logos that exists out there. We're going to dice it into, what does compliance really mean? Because it's a little bit intimidating when you approach it, when you start looking, when it's your job, as it is for us, to take and look at all the rules and regulations. It's a little bit of a daunting task. And it's one that none of us really want to do, but there's value in that. We'll talk about that as well. What kind of data needs to be protected, and more importantly, what does not. And then we'll touch briefly on what I call data sovereignty. It's an issue that's near and dear to all of our heart, and we'll talk about that as well. So let's dive right in. Why is it important? We're not just talking about compliance. A wise man once told me, he was talking about how to be successful in business. I was watching a lecture, and he said, if you want to get wealthy, the best way to do it is to find something that people don't like to do and learn how to do it really well. That's what we're talking about with compliance. Most of our competitors, they don't want to touch it. It's a lot of extra work. It feels like a lot of extra work, and it's really not. But it's an intimidating thing. It's hard to approach. So I'm going to smooth that approach for us right now. But if you can get good at it, the customers who need this, they have no choice. It's not like they can choose to have a compliant website or not. They're required to have a compliant website. And so there's value for those people who know how to create one. We're also going to be talking a little bit, it takes time to build substantial value. We're going to understand what the threshold means to you as a community, and also the competency. It's a company that customers will pay for. So let's make some sense of it all. Has anybody seen these icons and these logos? They're called trust badges. Have you seen these? You've seen them around? People put them out there. Nobody. Say what? The European Commission? Right. That's important. What's that doing up there? All right. What do you make of it all? Right? Which ones are important to you? Which ones have value to you? Which ones have value to your customers? Nobody really knows. Well, very few people know, right? And we're doing this right now because we've grown so fast. I mean, you guys have seen us. In the last 2 years, we've opened 2 data centers. We've opened one in Brisbane, Australia. And we just opened up Amsterdam, right? So now I have a whole bunch of new equipment, new personnel, new networks that I've got. We've got to stand up and go through the certification process again, because we're just at that point in our growth cycle that we have to redocument everything. So we're required to go through this again. But you'll see that there's some value in it for you. So let's put these in a little box. If we were to sort these guys, all those icons kind of fall into categories. Data protection, privacy service, audit, and green energy. Do we have any ecology-minded folks out there? No. We care about that, right? That's going to be something that some customers want, but that's not going to be a differentiator. That's going to be a scale tipper. If 2 companies are looking equally positioned, 2 identical bids, and one's green and one's not, that'll do something for you, but it will not get the deal for you. Audit and data protection. We're going to talk about that a little bit, and also privacy. These two categories are related. All right? The most important one for us is the one on the left. But let's talk about what these two do. E-Trust and Safe Harbor. Safe Harbor applies, it's an agreement between the EU and North America so that the privacy protection rules that apply to one can apply to the other. And that's, that's where most of our business is, so that's really important for us. We always recertify every single year on that. And E-Trust. And then the audit category. All these seals do, believe it or not, is say, in effect, that what you say you're going to do is what you do. There's no magic to seeing a SAS 70 compliance logo badge on a website. Let me give you an example of that. If a privacy policy says, we will take all of your data, publish it on the internet, find a YouTube video of you in the bathroom, and publish that as well, and then tell all your friends to look. If the privacy policy says that, and that is what you do, you are certified. Make sense? So when you're talking about the privacy and service and the audit, it's only what I said is what I do. If I get a SOC certification and audit and I pass it, it says passed, 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 passed. All that means is that they've looked at my controls and my policies and procedures, and that directly reflects upon what happens when you visit my website. That's all it says. Nobody's required to get an audit. What are people required to get? Over on this side, you see the European Commission. You see that, and in Europe that applies to both financial data and to healthcare data. You also see HIPPA, it's in the United States. That's an important way of protecting medical data. It stands for the Health Information Privacy and Accountability Act. I believe I have that correct. PCI is, what is PCI? You guys know PCI. Payment card industry, right. And that's their certification that we accept payments from our customers and we protect their credit card data, right? So from a data center perspective, from a hosting perspective, PCI compliance is really easy for me. It doesn't really impact us. We do a little bit. We have to put some physical security in place. But once that physical security is in place, the rest of it's up to you. You have to handle that data in a very special way. So we're going to worry about that. And there's one more type of thing that you're going to bump up against, because we bump up against it a lot these days. More and more. I say it a lot. Used to be not an issue. Now it's an issue. I'll make a brief mention of it. If I can make the... There we go. Business continuity. Have any of your customers asked about business continuity yet? You have? Yes? Okay. This is something that's coming up a little bit more. It applies to this in a certain way. So let me give you an example. If you were hosting a website with us, if you were worried about business continuity, if your customer is, they're saying, okay, what happens if the data center I'm in falls off the planet? What do you do then? Right? They want to have a plan, that you have a plan in case something really goes really horribly wrong. One of our biggest enterprise customers is BMW North America. And they insisted, we were the only hosting provider in the mix that had a business continuity plan in place. What happens if that particular cabinet catches on fire? What do you do? And because I said, okay, this is what I do. First of all, I'm going to scream like a little girl, and then I'm going to run around crazy, right? And then I'm going to take a replicated off-site SAN of your thing and export it to another data center and have you up and running in 24 hours. I have a plan, therefore I got the deal. Money wasn't a consideration. Now this isn't compliance per se, but for some companies it is. For some companies, especially in the financial services industry, having a business continuity plan is a part of their compliance. But that's handled with redundancy and some other things, and it's not a government regulation. If you want to know more about that, shoot me an email. We're going to put that information into a white paper as well, so we can talk a little bit about it. In case you bump up against it, we'll be a resource for you on that, so you can get some information. But we're going to talk about data protection. But what does compliance really mean? It means three things. It starts with some things that you need to do, right? Security, physical, and virtual. With healthcare information, all right, protecting access to the information is critical. Seems kind of, common sense, right? Common sense. But a lot of people, you have to think about it a little bit more broadly. All right? Who has physical access? All right, so your customers' websites. Who has access to the customer website? Customer? Who else? Administrators. You guys do too. So what they need to know, part of being compliant for both PCI and healthcare for both the EU Commission and for HIPAA, you guys have to document who in your organization, whether you're an organization of 1 or an organization of 100, you have to document how you're going to make sure that none of your employees access the data unless they really need to. Let me give you an example about how it works for us, all right? Because this directly applies to you. We have a support team. Many of you have called and talked to them at any hour of the day and night. They're there for you, right? But they are not allowed to access your server unless they have a specific business need to do so. You have to make a request. Now, it seems like a little thing, right? But if one of my employees just gets curious and accesses your server and there's not a support ticket from you requesting that they do something for you, they're in trouble. And we have a HR policy that backs that up. When we get audited, there's an audit process that's going on right now. The audit company calls in and tries to get one of the support guys to access information without providing author. It'll be, my website's down, it's really big in trouble, I don't remember my password, I don't remember who's authorized. They'll give them that story and see if my employees will let them access the site. If they do, we fail. Right? But that's for us. We have to have a business case use. We cannot touch your data, we cannot look at your data, we can't access your server unless we have a compelling business need to do so, and that's documented in a request somewhere, whether it's internally or externally. And that has to apply to you as well. If that doesn't apply to you, then it's not compliant.
What if the government has a request?
A government request, it depends, right? Depends. Let's talk about, I want you to ask that question again on the last slide. Okay? Don't forget. All right. So you can communicate to your customers, I will help you become compliant. And part of that, here's a list of the reasons. My stack looks like this. Yours is going to be much smaller. Here is when we'll access your site and no other time. Make sense? And here's who in my organization has the credentials to access the site and the terms under which they will do so. That simple amount of documentation, writing that down, is a part of compliance. Again, what you say you're going to do is what you do. Other things. Some things you have to document. We just talked a little bit about that. Policies, procedures, processes, how we go about doing things. So for example, for us, every month we run Windows updates, right? We schedule it, we send the customer notification, one of my infrastructure techs, coordinates with the support team, it's done at a certain time. I have to tell how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, who's going to be accessing the site. It's a process. That process is documented, and when we pass our audit, all they'll be looking for is that we followed the process. What we said we were going to do is exactly what we do. Some things that you have to prove. Test, audit, and look both ways. Okay, so testing and auditing, we're talking a little bit as we go along. But looking both ways, that's interesting, right? It's a little bit what we're doing right now. When I talk to a customer, if I tell them that their site is going to be HIPAA compliant, all I can speak of is how we act with regard to that. And then I tell them, you need to go look at your developer, the person who's building your site and your modules for you, and get their policies and procedures for them. I'm looking this way. And then I tell them, you need to look at your employees and make sure they're following the policies and procedures for access of information that you have. Look the other way. So as a developer in the hosting company, right? We're in the middle. We've got to look at both directions to make sure a site is not compliant. I can be compliant and the site cannot be. My data center can be fully compliant, fully tested, fully audited. Doesn't mean that your site is. But I'm documenting in my processes that I'm not responsible for the code. I don't provide you the tools for it to make the code compliant. I'm also saying I'm not giving any instructions to the customer, my end customer, to make sure their employees have right access. I control the access this way, But I do not control if they share passwords and usernames amongst themselves and post things. I'm not responsible for that. But I'm fully compliant, and my data center is fully compliant if I follow these rules. And you look both ways. And I'm compliant because I've looked both ways. Does that make sense? All right. Types of data to protect. It is pretty common sense, but let's talk about it anyway. Personally identifiable information. There's one that's not, though. Medical information, financial data, related metadata. This one's one that people miss. If you have, and this is the one that's very common if you're building, say, a website for a doctor's office. Perfect example. You're building a website for a doctor's office, and you have developed an app that lets their patients schedule appointments. That's not medical information, is it? No, but it's related meta information about the customer. You're not even allowed to share the fact that a patient has an appointment. The fact that a patient has an appointment is a protected class of information. Make sense?
Another example, I just was about an internet of a company, and they had in Germany you have to have labor rules, but the employees are not shouldn't be supervised all the time. So they wanted to have some statistics, but the labor organization said, okay, but no IP addresses.
Right.
Which makes it very difficult if you make some evaluation without IP addresses, but they were supposed to. So
right.
We had to at least go around and say, okay, we need it on the technical level, but we do not provide it to all the reports based on IP addresses were cut out. They were not given to the people who administered the site because of compliance.
Right, right. It's a good example as well. But again, being aware of that, and this is what's written in the law now. A lot of this is becoming clear over time. These laws have been building up steam over the last 10 years, right? 10 to 15 years. But it's only now people are starting to understand what some of those things mean. And there's in both Europe and the United States, there is what's called, a good faith, right? So believe it or not, it's okay to make a mistake. It's not okay not to pay attention. So I guess there's two examples about making appointments. And you don't want to be afraid of those things, but you want to kind of be aware of those things, right? If you screw up but you have all this other stuff in place, they're just going to make you fix it. Does that make sense? Okay. Others as per your privacy policy. That's important as well as too. And you don't think about that from a government compliance standpoint, but if you've said in your privacy policy that certain information is protected, you've got to make sure that's protected. Things that you don't have to. General images. The website database. Non-specific web content. When I say non-specific, it means not specifically related to an individual person. But if a customer is logging in and you're displaying information relevant to that customer, that particular information needs to be protected. Does that make sense? True, but see, let me show you that in a second. Next slide. It's a great comment. Okay, so this is kind of graphically related. The stuff that's in blue is the stuff that your hosting or data center provider needs to do. If it's red, it's stuff that you need to cover. And if it's the orangey, yellow, amber color, non-specific color on that side of the spectrum, that's stuff that your customer needs to take care of. So when I write my policies and procedures in my documentation, I'm going to specifically be pointing to the developer is responsible for these things, so I make sure it's clear that I'm not, and that the customer is responsible for some other things. So let's take those one at a time. We're going to come back to databases. Okay, what we do. There's certain rules I have to have. For example, I have to have physical access controls. Now, believe it or not, there are some baseline. It's got to be in a locked building in a locked cabinet. Most of us these days go the extra mile. We have biometric control, either eye scan or fingerprint scans. We have man traps. We have multiple layers of security. We do. You know what a man trap is? Have you seen that? Oh, it's amazing. Have you guys seen these things? You walk into the data center, you put your fingerprint in, and you scan your badge, and a door opens. But it hasn't verified you yet. You step in, door closes behind you, and you're in like one of those scanners at the airport, and you're trapped. And if you're not authorized, you stay trapped. It's called a man trap, yeah. James Bond, it kind of shoots you down there into a shark tank. Perfect, yeah. But it looks like that, and you're kind of thinking about that, and you're hoping there's not a malfunction or that you didn't scuff your thumb that day, and there's going to be a little bit of a problem. But we have those called biometric man traps, all those things, multiple layers of security. Then once you get through, there's video cameras everywhere. Once you get through, then the cabinet itself has a special passcode lock, either a combination lock or a key lock, depending on which data center you're in. So those are all the physical securities, and we have to have physical security. But the most important thing for me, that's no-brainer. See, compliance for me really is just common sense, good hosting, right? Common sense, good business practice. But I have to document those things and say what I'm doing. Remote access control. Who can access the site when? Nobody can log in through the admin interfaces from our perspective to our network from the outside. It can't be done. We just keep it closed down. Our on-site customer support, they can log in all they want, right, from inside the network. And we know who's logging in. We log everything. The firewalls, malware protection, those are basics. It doesn't say what kind of malware protection. They want you to have antivirus scans and things of that nature, but they don't say which one you have. So it's not saying you have to have AAA, Mac Daddy, super malware protection that costs you $150,000, but they want you to have a good, what's called industry standard practices. Backups and restores. You must have a backup and restore procedure. It's rather mum on what kind of backup and restore procedure. But whatever you have to have it documented. For us, out of the box, everything's 14 days sequential. And the edge network. There's a series of very large switches at the end of our network that run everything, and they provide everything from DDoS protection to some other things. So those things all have to be in place for us, and they are. But now that we've expanded, I have to document all of that. What do you have to do? Okay. This is what you're interested in anyway. Databases. What needs to be protected? Keep in mind something. There can be more than one database. Encrypting a database can sometimes impede in performance if the website is accessing databases for just stuff that's keeping the page running. You don't have to encrypt that. What you have to encrypt is patient information. So you can have a site load, have a separate table in the database. With the newer versions of SQL, you can encrypt specific tables and not encrypt other ones. So I guess what I'm saying is, don't encrypt databases doesn't mean encrypt everything. The databases that store customer-specific information need to be encrypted. Whether or not you're calling it from the local web server, a standalone SQL server next to it, or you're pulling from a medical database or a financial database across town or across the world, that data has to be encrypted. You don't have to encrypt everything. You can have more than one database. Encrypt only what you need to encrypt. Your site will have better performance. Website code. The CMS, the modules, and custom code. This stuff has to be protected on your end. You've got to use good protection procedures. And if you're handling customer data and displaying customer data, right, you've got to protect it. Interaction, email and API. Biggest mistake I see for non-compliant websites. Biggest mistake, email. We are so accustomed to using email as a method. We all use that, right? Email to transfer information, don't we? Yes? Email servers are built into all the applications. We give you an email server when you sign up for a hosting account. But then they'll do, customers logged in, set the appointment, and they'll use email as the transfer mechanism for the appointment back into the office. It's okay to use email, but you've got to use high-level security email. It's called TLS. Are you familiar with TLS security on email? That's the minimum standard. We can, if you're with us, we can help you. Your hosting provider should be able to help you set up a TLS connection on your email to protect it, to make sure it's not clear text going across. Your API calls. All these things need to be protected and handled as securely as possible. And then content. Who's entering it and why? Is the content being automatically filled in? Again, this is here specifically in case somebody logs in and you want to display, here's their name, address, their account number, and a photo of them. So that they feel that they can see themselves being logged in. That happens when we log into the DNN Connect site. Did you notice that? There's information about you. You filled in your own bio. My photo displays. A photo that is now many years old, but I don't want to change it because I have less hair. Right? There's those photos display. Right? If I was a patient, if this was a medical site, or if this was a financial planning site, that information would need to be shielded so that it couldn't be accessed from the outside unless I'm an authorized user. External backups. Okay, this is another place that developers make a mistake. Love you all. This happens. If you're keeping, for your customer, it's very common to keep a copy of the website on a local server because you want to, and you want to be safe, and you want to be able to try experiments. Unless you have, basically, if you're doing that, you're becoming a compliant data center. Because if you have a full copy of the website pulled down to your server at your facility, those controls have to be in place because that data's there too. Make sense? So you have to consider whether you want to. There are solutions for this, whether it's, get anybody in my study industry. We can provide you off-cabinet, off-site backups and restore places. So you can put full copies of your data on separate servers, so you can have it as if it was in your facility, but you don't really want that responsibility of having protected data unless you're willing to put all these other controls in place yourself. You let your hosting provider take care of that for you. Does that make sense? Any questions about that?
What if the database is fully encrypted? What if you're using the data for testing purposes, but you yourself have no access to it? It's fully encrypted.
It's a great question. Fully encrypted is important, but you got to have physical access control. So, for example, you would have to document, and believe it or not, you could do this. You could set your house up in your documentation as being your repository. And you'd have to say, I have these access controls in place. I have this level of encryption in place. I have locks and bolts on my front door. I have security cameras out in front of me. You'd have to document what access controls you have to the physical data. Does that make sense? Sure.
Populating staging environments where you want to take a copy of live, do some tests before you then make a change to live, but you've got sensitive data in there.
Right.
And I always find it a challenge to write the script and delete all the stuff. I'm wondering if you've got any solutions there.
Well, we try to do, and our support, my support team does this every single day. We give development and staging in our environment to all of our server customers at no additional charge. And so it all stays it all stays live, all stays in a common environment, and never has to leave. Especially when you're talking about protected data, we think that's the best way to do it. In fact, we have some of our high-end customers, who a couple of Fortune 500 companies that they don't get to touch production at all. None of their employees touch production. My staff, security clearances, they've all been background checked, all behind my firewalls. We take it, they put it in pre-prod, they put it in dev to pre-prod to prod. When it goes to prod, our team pushes it out, right? And we do that for anybody.
And going the other way, if they want to populate their staging environment with a copy of live?
Piece of cake. It can go the other way as well. Okay. For us, it's a snapshot. In fact, if you're following what we believe, this is the realm of our opinion, our best practices opinion now. We take incremental snapshots every single day. So, and we do them on the fly. You can request a snapshot, full backup or snapshot backup at any point. Just say, I want one right now, and we'll do it for you. So that's a piece of cake, but it goes the other way. But again, it all stays in the same environment. It stays behind. And that way you're saying, I have access, I've got login, I've got my username and my password to log into the server, this is what I can do. You'd start a ticket, you'd say, I need a snapshot, a backup right now, once done, it's pushed down and made for you. Yes?
Yeah, I guess the second part is removing the personal information.
Yeah. For us, I don't know how everybody else does it, for us it's a support ticket. If you want a pre-prod deleted, it's a support ticket, it's gone.
What I mean is if you've got a situation where you've got 1,000 customers that are all doing monthly credit card payments, for example, you don't necessarily want that information to be available in the staging environment.
Right.
But in order to do an adequate test before you make a change to production, you need to actually load it into the staging environment, so you have to take that data out.
Right.
And that's a real headache for us.
But that's something a data center can do because it's a content of your tables, and that's something they don't want to deal with.
Yeah, you would just delete those tables.
Okay.
Yeah, and it would stay right there. And you'd have total visibility to that.
Random data or something, it's sensitive data.
Right.
But you still have something viable.
Right. And one more side thing, one of the most common questions we get is people ask, okay, I'm encrypting my sensitive data on my database. I'm encrypting it, but I want to make sure that the backups are encrypted. The technology we use, if it's encrypted here, it's encrypted here. So it's the same for us, and we never see it. Anything else? You good? Okay, cool. Okay, what your customer does. You know what? And one of the ways you can build credibility with your customer is to tell them what they have to do. That's one of the best ways to build up credibility. So the things they have to work on, the interaction, the content, and how they access the site. So if one of your customers, and it's very common for a doctor to come in and say, I need a HIPAA compliant site, I need an EU Commission compliant site, go make it. And you say, okay, done. Here's what you have to do. This is what you have to do to be HIPAA compliant. All right? And it's things like how their employees share information that's received via email. Who in their office has access to site content. Maybe they don't. Maybe the way they get to HIPAA compliance, they make you do it. But again, since it's documented that you have access, that's all that's required. Their documentation is, we don't touch it. We got a guy for that. As long as their process is documented. So again, data center, hosting provider has to be compliant. You guys have to be compliant. And the customer has to be compliant as well. And that makes a compliant environment. Make sense? All right.
These are said and done. How do you enforce these things?
Well, you don't. Here's the fun part. You don't have to.
Tell the client that he has to take care of it.
Right. It's it's off your shoulder, and how it gets off your shoulders is, like I said, you step up to the line, you look down line, you look this line, and you say, customer's responsible for this, data center is responsible for this. This is what I do.
So you use a signature.
Yeah.
For the customer, and then you can put the logo up on the website.
The logo can be on the website. Yes. Now here's the key though. If you're following these rules, you can put a HIPAA logo on your website. This website is HIPAA compliant. A savvy customer is going to want it to be audited. And that's a whole different thing. That's where you get like a SOC audit or an SSAE 16 audit. And all they're doing is saying, you say, yes, I'm HIPAA compliant. That's a fair statement. But that's a completely fair statement. I am HIPAA compliant. But here, I'm saying I'm HIPAA compliant, and now here's my policies, and now here is a third-party company, and they say I'm following these rules. So the audit is basically a third and disinterested party saying that you've got game. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I'm surprised that it's so lax.
Yeah.
That you can actually qualify for the logo
Right.
without that third step.
Right. It's tough. And there are companies that just do HIPAA audits as well. But here's the deal. If you put HIPAA compliant on your site and they find out that you aren't, it's a problem for you.
All you need is a signature
Well, when you say a signature, you mean what?
from the customer that he's compliant.
Right. But see, it's like this. With restaurants, it's the same thing with restaurants. They have health inspectors, right? And they don't inspect a restaurant every single day. Here's your rules. This is your cleanliness rules. This is how long you have to disinfect your dishes. They give you all these rules, and you have to be trained, and you follow them. And then every once in a while, a health inspector walks in and says, let me see your books. And here's my employees. They've all gone through the food handling training. And here's my thing. And then the guy looks around, makes sure there's no roaches or any mold growing anywhere. And if there is, you're in trouble. But you are not a dirty restaurant until after you've been inspected. Does that make sense? So you just do, but if you just make sure you have your stuff together.
But that's a public health service, which doesn't cost me money as a restaurant goer. But if my customer is a financial site and he says, no, we don't want to pay for audits. We've signed this document, and we won't have someone walk through the door and check our process.
Right.
In order to save money.
Then you make what you do is you make them sign off that that's on them.
Yeah, sign off, like I said, just a signature and I'm here.
Right. That they're taking responsibility. And you say, my employee is responsible, my customer is responsible for making sure this process is audited.
Then
But it's actually really serious because if somebody walks into their door, steals the credit card details through them, spends money on it, they are responsible to the bank to pay that money back.
Yes, they are.
So the responsibility, because they've signed it off and because they've got the logo on it, saying to them they are responsible for that data and they're responsible for any money that gets lost in the process. So it's not something to be taken lightly.
Right. Richard's absolutely correct. But a company, but here's the deal, be a discerning, discerning vendor as well. Any customer who doesn't care about this is got some issues as far as being a customer, right? I'd be worried if I was going to get paid. But the good thing about this is that a good business is not going to, they know this is coming. They want to see this coming. It's funny, it used to be, when we were training our staff on this, get customers to come in for data center tours at different places, and we arrange data center tours for them. And they have to sign papers. They have to provide ID before they get in. And they have to sign that I know I wear this. I'm not allowed to take photos. I'm not allowed to do that. They sign all these things. And some of the people were, it's embarrassing. We make the customers wait and fill out this form. We need to find a way to do this faster. I said, no, you don't. No, you don't. This is proof to them that we do what we say we're going to do. This is something to be proud of. Make it take an extra 15 minutes. Drag it out. Give them another 3 pieces of paper to file. Because that process to them proves your authority. Shortcuts don't. Good. Yes. All right. Doing well. Okay, brief word about data sovereignty. This is something that we all are interested in, and I've been collecting opinions from internet attorneys. Believe it or not, there's attorneys that specialize in this sort of thing, and this is the prevailing opinion. Again, I want to say that I am not an attorney, and I'm not giving you legal advice. All right. So what? My disclaimer's in place. But this is the collected opinion that's going around. Data is governed by the jurisdiction of the country in which it resides, not where it's accessed. So, data for us that resides in our Amsterdam data center is governed by the privacy rules and restrictions and court orders and things of that nature of the Netherlands, right? It's one of the reasons we chose one of several reasons why the Netherlands was the right choice for us as far as one of our data centers. The data that resides in our Omaha data center is governed by those. No matter where somebody accesses the site from, it's governed by where it exists. So we think this applies to everybody. So any websites that are physically hosted at the Omaha data center are subject to any subpoena or legal inquiry of the United States. If it's in Brisbane, Australia, it's subject to the rules and government jurisdictions of Australia. If it's in Amsterdam, it's subject to the laws of the Netherlands. Does that make sense? Now, let me give you a little bit of a caveat to that. When you're talking about compliance, it gets a little bit hinky. So we have, again, another very large customer, probably one of the largest customers on .NET Nuke. And we have for them a business continuity plan, a very robust one. They have dozens and dozens of websites. All of them are based in Omaha, Nebraska. The country's a North American-based company. We have a complete replicated web farm in our UK data center for them. It's a complete copy. It's a complete replication. If Omaha goes offline for any reason, for any period of time, DNS goes flip, they're broadcasting from the UK. We even have a service that we offer a lot of our customers that's based upon this. It's called powercasting, that allows data to physically, to truly localize. We got one silicon chip manufacturing company that they're broadcasting from Brisbane, Omaha, and the UK. All right? So in that case, the only thing you have to be aware of is they are now subject, since there's full copies of their website in 3 locations, they are subject to 3 jurisdictions. Because that's where the data is. It's not a redirect or, hey, it looks like you're bouncing off of Brisbane, but you're actually still over here. It's no DNS tricks. There's full replication of the entire structure in multiple locations. If you do that, you are then subject to multiple jurisdictions. If you're in a main country, it's usually not a big deal, but just something to be aware of. Customers may be sensitive to that. Whether their concerns are legitimate or whether they are just perceptions, makes no difference. if your customer is sensitive to that, that's what they need to be aware of. Does that make sense? And that answers your other question, doesn't it? Okay.
Sorry, can I just ask you?
Of course.
You're saying we've got a company saying in South Africa, we're hosting our data in the Netherlands. There's a legal dispute. They would have to sue us in the Netherlands to get their data. They couldn't sue us in South Africa.
Remember that disclaimer I gave you a second ago? I'm going to repeat that disclaimer real quick.
I mean,
I'm not. Yeah, my opinion, in the opinion of some attorneys I've been speaking to about this specific issue right now. In their opinion, it is the data has to be served in the Netherlands. Right? Now, I don't know about a South African citizen and what his obligations are if he has access, since the citizen himself is subject to the rules of South Africa, and if he's an administrator on the account, I do not know if the South African government can compel him to access the data and pull it off. I'm not aware of that. I can, however, speak from a data center perspective that if somebody's hosted in Amsterdam and we get some sort of a legal inquiry from South Africa, I go, I got nothing. And only because we have to abide by the rules in which we're doing places we're doing business. Yes? Okay. Does anybody else have questions about data sovereignty? Sure.
It's the definition of serving.
Mm-hmm.
So suppose you have a central database in one country that you're serving the website of other countries.
Absolutely.
For performance reasons. Have you got any thoughts?
And I've been reading. In fact, Sean was helpful. He was sending me some links on some things, and I've been reading. I'm doing this because I've been reading so much, right? There are cases that are working their way through courts of that, but those cases, to my knowledge, the ones that the results that I've been reading are, it takes there's reciprocal agreements in place with some countries, right? So I don't know this for a fact, but let's just say, for example, the UK and the United States have a reciprocal agreement, and we honor the subpoenas of the UK and they honor ours. That could be potential, right? But again, the baseline is where the data is the rules that govern it, right? So if you had I guess amusingly so, and this is probably why all the best spammers are based in Kazakhstan these days. It's where all the Kazakhstani spammers go to summer. I don't know. I got nothing. So you got they base themselves there because they're not subject to. Even if, because we all know how this works, right? Those packets they could bounce off 1,700 data centers. So that data exists for some flash of time all over the world before it's delivered to its location. What the rules are going in the pattern of, if the database is located in Italy, the database is subject to the rules of Italy. If the website is being hosted out of Madrid, if the website itself is subject to the rules of Madrid. That's where the rulings are coming down. But I got to tell you, this is in flux. This is something that is working its way through different court cases right now. But everything seems to be pointing in that direction.
As an American company, you have also to follow those rules that you have to help the American authority. Nevertheless, when you're active, right?
That's I don't believe that's true. I think that the NSA, everyone's worried about the NSA right now, right? And that's probably what you're referring to mostly. Is what's most significant is with regard to them is that they're what's doing is called sniffing, right? They're putting devices and technologies in place to sniff traffic as it flies by, right? And I don't know how that works with international law. I don't know how that fits. It's never existed before. We've invented something that we have no case history on, right? But as far as if the NSA has never come to anybody. I know it. Who knows my history a little bit? Before I worked in the hosting industry, I sold software to the hosting industry. So I've been around this for a long time. And I've asked my pals. I mean, I've been with Tony at PowerDNNManage.com for about 2.5 years. Before that, I worked for Smarter Tools Software. Smarter Tools Software makes software that they sell to hosting companies, right? And I was there for over 6 years. And I know literally thousands of hosting companies. I know thousands. Nobody has received a request from the NSA. Not one. Right, but that's the point I'm making is that they're just kind of spying and snooping, right, and sniffing traffic as it goes across pipes. They're not coming to data centers, and that's not their job. right? Now that said, we have in America what's called the FBI, right? And the FBI can come, but they don't have jurisdiction in Amsterdam. But if somebody's committing a crime in the United States, and we've had a few of these, where somebody is using a website for a criminal activity, and they'll say, here's the paper, and we have to give them access to that in the United States.
Even if the data is stored in the UK or
No.
in Amsterdam?
No. Sure.
My understanding is that a data center in Europe can be sending a packet, and if it does a round trip all the way to the US and comes back, theoretically speaking, goes to a pipe, STM32 or something. Goes to, but they got repeaters every now and again. Repeaters needs, STM32 because it needs to be amplified. At the point of amplification, you could theoretically put a supercomputer on top and stay.
Right. You can, and they're not exactly talking about what they're doing, right? So, theoretically, yes. But you know what? You're going to have to be doing something. The amount of data that's flowing over the internet is insane, right? And we talk about supercomputers. One of our newest employees built a supercomputer. It's one of the things we liked about him. He actually built one in the Holland. It's not Holland, but it's called the Holland Data Processing Center. He built a supercomputer there, right? And we think about how powerful those machines are. There is not a machine or series of machines that can process all the data going across the internet. We're a little bit off the field. This isn't really a compliance issue, but we're just touching base on this a little bit. I think that, whether we agree with that process or not to the side, I'm just kind of saying the politics of the matter aside, they're not going to be they can't see everything. We like to think that it's like in that Batman movie where he builds this screen and he can see every single thing. That doesn't exist, right? Something gets flagged, and yeah. So it's not possible. There's no possible way. I mean, even the traffic of email. The other thing is, what the biggest thing on the internet, believe it or not, bigger than every website, bigger than Facebook and Google and every Bing search, every Google search, every Yahoo search. You take everything else on the internet and put it on one side of the scale, and you put email over here. Email is 6 times larger. Email is the biggest thing in the internet by it's not even close. It is just this incredible big thing. That even can't be looked at. Every email that's going through can't be looked at, right? So the thought that there's somebody spying on everything that we do, it's likely not true. Now that said, with the cooperation of Google sells our data, right? I think we have a bigger threat, Google providing data to the NSA, than the NSA getting their own information. I think that's a bigger concern, right? But I think back to the compliance side of things, we have a big customer in Australia. It's a big financial, it's a bank. I'm under NDA, I can't tell you who they are, but it's one of the largest banks in Asia Pac, right? They're adamant. Data has to stay on Australian shores. Cannot leave. That's fine. It's not going to, right? So that is a compliance for them, right? And our position on the matter is that it is subject to the rules and regulations. And if the banking governing board of Australia, I don't know what it's called, but whatever that is, they've got one, came and served a subpoena on that particular website, we would comply with that website under the rules governing Australia. So I guess that's all I got in the matter. And believe it or not, nobody else has much more. Does that make sense? All right, I'm going to be finishing on time. Let me see here. This is a big project for us. Redoing, since we've added 2 new data centers in the last year and a half, lots of stuff going on for us. We're going to be producing a series of webinars and white papers on this. They're going to, just like we did last year, when we do big projects like this, they're going to be fully open to the community. I'll let you all know when they're up there, so that if you want to take... Oh, sure. Richard?
I just wanted to ask you one thing. Do you guys help with the PCI compliance?
Well, help in what way?
Well, I mean, it's a minefield.
Yeah.
When we had a look at PCI compliance, it blew my my head. I said to my client, don't do it. But they are insistent they want it done. They want to be able to keep the credit card so that they can do recurring billing and all sorts of stuff.
Right.
So now we're in a situation where we have to try and go through it, and we're looking around for help. So
right.
The question is, do you do that?
Well, I can answer that with an anecdote. Trustwave. Has anyone gone through a Trustwave audit? The Trustwave is certainly in the UK the main sort of PCI compliant audit method, and it's broken down into various sections. So some things are obviously my responsibility. Other things, like having a network diagram that shows how my web host connects to the internet, I contact my hosting company.
Yeah.
Can you give me one of those so I can fill in my PCI audit?
Yeah.
And they couldn't.
Really?
Time for change, obviously.
Yeah. Somebody can help you with that. I'll get back with you. No, but from that perspective, we provide that all the time. In fact, if you look, you ask any one of our guys, I have 18 white papers that just document our policies and procedures and positions that we provide to customers as part of this whole process. So, especially enterprise customers, giving them a network diagram is part of business for us. So if you need a network diagram, that's a piece of cake.
So almost with Trustwave, you want to drop down a list that says which hosting company do you use.
Right.
If it's on the list, it just fills that section in for you.
Right.
It'll be perfect.
Well, you know what, Ed?
There's an opportunity.
We'll see. I'll contact Trustwave. But I think to your question, we go out of our way not to compete with developers. Developers are our lifeblood. Developers are our business. And so we have developers on staff just for what we do in-house. And for troubleshooting, if a customer comes in and says, my site's broken, we'll take a look at it from a development perspective and see if there's a problem. But we don't do development. That said, advice, documentation, diagrams, we help customers with that every single day. That's all we do. We're used to dealing with enterprise organizations, and this is everyday business for them, just having those things in place. You don't even get in the door.
You're saying that from a data center, you are PCI compliance from what you need to provide.
Yes.
You've got the document to prove it, so we just have to do our part and get the documentation for you to add into that compliance process.
Right. And we make sure that, because we're not walking around stacking blocks and building the physical data center building. We make sure that they're PCI compliant as well. Like I said, we look both ways. So the people who provide, one of our largest network providers in the United States is a company called Level 3. We make sure they're PCI compliant. And it's easy. It's easy, almost really easy for them because they're just handling the packets. But we still have to look that direction as well. And we say that's their response, so we're just part of that chain of compliance. Yes?
Yeah, good.
Anybody else have any questions? More stuff's going to be coming. We're going to be documenting these things, trying to put resources in place that gives more detail. For example, we talked about how to take, and if you're using email to transmit protected information, you got to use TLS security. We're going to be coming out with a KB article about how to ensure that your email has TLS applied to it so that you can transmit data that way. A few things like that, and you'll be seeing blog posts and white papers coming as we're going through the certification process again. We're redoing all 18 of those white papers. Every single one of them is getting redone right now. That falls in my department. We expect to be done October with everything. So it's a big deal for us right now. Any questions? Thank you for your time.